Hey, good morning. Granny Gear here for Old Guy on a Bike. On this Tech Tuesday, this is my follow-up video on my use of the Magene C606 Cycling Computer. It's a bargain, but is it for you? And I'll be talking in this video who it's for, who it may not be for, and well, is it for me? Now, in a recent Tech Tuesday video, I announced I was going to be using a couple Magene products. They were sent out to me at no cost. I mentioned that in the other video, just for my use and observation, and I agreed to report back report back to Magene on my findings. Now, the way I'm going to do this, basically, this video, it's not going to be, I won't show you a lot of detail on what every button does, what every feature does. That's been done to death, and that's not really my forte necessarily anyway. I just want to show you my experience, talk about basically I am the average user, maybe the above average user in some cases, and I'll get to that. How it was just to take it out of the box, go use it the way I was using my Wahoo Element Bolt before this. And I'm just going to report on my findings. If you want to skip ahead to some chapters, it'll pretty much be like out of the box and getting it set up, how that was been, that user experience, getting out on the bike and using it. Things where it was good, things where it was less than good, who I think it might be for, and who it maybe isn't for, and at the end, a little bit about working with the company that makes this because, well, sorry, you're beeping at me, because that didn't go quite like I hoped, but more on that at the end of the video. All right, let's get going, shall we? Now, to begin with, taking that out of the box, as I said, it's a very nice looking computer, and that still impresses me as something that's made well. When you turn it on, you look at it, it's a pretty big screen, it's bright, it's nice to look at, it's easy to read, and I thought, oh, this is a nice looking computer. One of the other things that comes within the box, which I really like, not all computers come with, I don't know if you can see that on camera, can you see that held up against my arm? That's a leash. There's a little leash here that you can put, and then what you do, you wrap around your stem of your handlebar, and then if this comes off while you're riding or you're in transit, if it's on the rack on your bike, well, it ain't going to go too far. I know it's a simple thing, but not every computer comes with that. I really like leashes. Okay, like every one of these smart computers does, smart GPS computers, it has an app. I found that the instructions to download the app were very, very easy. The app is the One Lap Fit. I think I said that right. It's an odd name. I used to say One Fit Lap, but I think it's One Lap Fit. Anyway, downloaded that, no problem, from the Apple Store. That was really easy. I use an iPhone. It was easy to get the computer synced with it, kind of those things where you scan it, and it says, hey, I'm a Magene C606 computer. Found it. That was easy peasy. And I found the app generally to be reasonably easy to use. It's pretty full featured as far as like setting up things like pages. There's all kinds of options to set up your data fields for all your pages. You can do different profiles. If you want to do like road, gravel, mountain, etc., you can do that. Adding sensors. I added my existing Wahoo heart rate monitor, and I added the Magene L508 taillight. I added my SRAM Access batteries. I didn't really care telling me what gear I'm in. I know what gear I'm in pretty much, but I do like to know the battery status without going into the SRAM app or pushing a button and looking at, the little button on my derailleur. That actually saved me on a ride because I started the ride, I went through my pages, and it showed me a red battery on my front derailleur, which allowed me to change it before I started the ride. That was convenient. So all of the setup, the app itself, I found to be pretty straightforward. I tend to upload routes from usually Ride with GPS. I'll create something or I'll download someone else's route. And that process was a little different. It doesn't connect with Ride with GPS as far as I can see in any of it. You can like export, import from like Strava and all these other Training Peaks and all that. Didn't seem to work with Ride with GPS, at least it wasn't on the list. And so what I was able to do was export a GPX file, either out of Strava or Ride with GPS, put it on the cloud, drop it into my phone, into a folder, and then I could upload it to the Magene app actually very easily, and then push it to the computer. There's a lot of steps, actually, much more than just syncing with Ride with GPS like I could with my Wahoo. How much that matters to you, it may or may not matter depending on how technically inclined you are. And that's kind of the next point I'll get to with the whole app system. But it worked, and it worked reliably, and it got me my routes into the Magene computer with no problem. Overall, I'd say the Magene app and interface between that and the C606 was pretty straightforward. I will say this though, there isn't a ton of educational material available for this. There is one video that Magene put out that shows you through the steps of how to like set up the computer and do things, but it's like an AI voice, and it's very, very fast. I think it's coming from Chinese to English, and it's so fast, and you want more. You go, wait, what did you mean by that? And by then it's 2 steps further along in the video. Not too helpful, and it's not like you've got someone to call and ask, hey, how do I do this? So here's my point to that. Now, Mrs. Granny Gear, smart woman, runs her own business, all those types of things. And yet when it comes to like a little technical app like that, thinking about just getting in there and moving through fields and pushing buttons and trying things, not her strong point. That's what I'm here for. It is my strong point. I would say sometimes apps like that aren't exactly straightforward, and I would say that the Magene app in some ways is a little bit less straightforward. So if you are struggling with, if you look at your smartphone, sometimes you go, I have no idea why it's doing that, and you don't know what to do with it. Be forewarned, there isn't a lot of support around helping you figure out why it isn't working. And if you're not comfortable just pushing buttons until you figure it out, or you don't have an aptitude for it, well, something to think about. So let's get to using it. Now, when they sent the Magene computer, the C606 out to me, this is what it comes with in the box for a mount. It comes with one of these little spidery looking mount things and a bunch of rubber bands, right? You can see those. So basically you put that on top of your stem. It would actually go this way. This would be the top. You put it on your stem, you wrap a rubber band around it of the right size, or you can go on a handlebar, wrap a rubber band around it, and it'll mount there. Okay, but not so okay. For instance, on one of my bikes, I got a square stem, right? It's a Redshift stem. Well, this is designed to sit, it's a little concave there, right? It's designed to sit on a round stem or a round handlebar. It doesn't sit really good on a flat stem. Kind of chintzy, however, keep in mind the Magene is $160, so there is that. But this is what they sent me. In my order was this very, very nice out front mount. It's a good quality mount, nice and stable. It's thick, it's not wimpy at all. Comes in a little box like this. Now you'd think, oh, okay, I'll just buy this because I'm saving a lot on the computer. I could not find out where to buy this anywhere. Not on the Magene Amazon store, not even on AliExpress, which is lots of times where you can find accessories for things like this. I could not find this anywhere. I still never found it. I couldn't buy it. I asked Magene about it. They sent me a link, but the link was the wrong link. It went to something else in AliExpress. Don't know. So that brings me up to the next point when it comes to actually physically using this thing as far as mounts go. Okay, here we go. This is a little insert that goes like on your Garmin mount or your Wahoo mount. Now Garmin has their own little puck, little insert, right? Wahoo has their own. They sit 90 degrees from each other, right? You can't use a Wahoo and a Garmin because the computer faces the wrong way, and some of the other computer manufacturers kind of have their own versions of this. Okay, well, Magene does too. Now, they say it's compatible with a Garmin mount, the most popular, but when you go to click it in, when you go to actually fit the computer in and turn it in a Garmin mount, it's kind of a hard turn. I'm almost uncomfortable with how much force it takes to click it in, and I can see at some point maybe it's going to start to stress out these little plastic ears on the back of the computer, which is molded into the computer case. If you break it, you broke it. Well, no problem. I'll just use the Magene mount, right? Okay, well, what if you got 4 bikes, 2 bikes, 3 bikes? You don't want to be moving the mount, right? Well, I'll just go buy a Magene mount. Well, I couldn't figure out how to do that. I don't want to use this, particularly the one that just rubber bands on. Well, it actually comes with one of extra of these in the computer bag of rubber bands and things. One extra mount. Well, I just swapped it out For my Wahoo mount, just unscrewed that, put this in my little K-edge mount that sits on the stem of my gravel bike, and screwed this down, and the Magene mount worked fine. But what if I had another bike? Well, here is one I found after a whole bunch of AliExpress and Googling. This is an official little Magene box that has 3 of the little inserts, little pucks or whatever you want to call them, that you could swap out with an existing Garmin or Wahoo mount, as long as the drilling allows you to orient it correctly. And most like K-edge mounts, they're drilled for either Wahoo or Garmin, right? It was very inexpensive. It had to come from China, and it's a solution. But this, at least at the time of this video, is not on the Magene Amazon store or at the Magene website to be able to order this directly from them. It should be. Now that all the mount situation was somewhat settled, let's get on to actually using the thing. Just using this and just putting it on your bike and going for a ride and getting all the metrics that I wanted off of it once I had the pages set up was actually really, really good. It is a beautiful, large, bright display. I never use this at night, but in any daylight, shadowy, overcast, bright sun, shadowed situation, I could always see the screen. It's very large, it's very legible, and things like battery life and those types of things, I got no complaints. I tend to charge my computer after every ride, my blinkies after every ride. This is kind of me, but it seemed to me that battery life was tracking to be very reasonable. It was accurate with things like my heart rate sensor and things like that. And actually, my heart rate sensor was starting to get a little worn out. The strap was worn out. It was an old Wahoo mount. I actually bought a Magene heart rate chest strap. Now, here's an example of cost for value. This was, I think, $25, if I remember right. If I'm wrong, I'll put it up on the screen. Wasn't a whole lot of money on the Magene Amazon store, okay? I looked at a Wahoo heart rate monitor. If I remember right, it was more like $80 or $90. Well, wow. This one, this works just fine. It's actually smaller and lighter than the Wahoo. Now, unless it's unreliable in some way, I mean, dies on me or something, it's $25. And it works great with the Magene. So there is that. I like how it starts with a 1-button press. You want to start a ride, stop a ride, that's right there at the bottom. So that's easy peasy. Turning it on and off is just one power button. The Fields button here is really big. All the buttons are big and easy to use. They move through the fields really easily. The user experience from that standpoint of just putting this on the bike and riding with it was excellent. When I'm done, I stop the ride, I end the ride. I said, yes, I want to keep this. It will save it in the computer. If I have the Magene app open, it'll upload to the app on my phone, and from there, it'll push it to Strava. So I have it set up to push to Strava. That was seamless, no problems at all. I will say that it kind of creates its own name when it downloads the file and shoots it to Strava. So you need to go in at some point, kind of and rename that. But other than that, I found it to be excellent. I didn't use the app itself for any metrics. Like I'm not looking at, my ride stats or heart rate stats or profile, any of that. I just didn't do that. And I usually don't do that much, although I can, and maybe I'll do that more in the future. I usually would use Strava for that, frankly. Once I upload, I sit on my laptop and look at it. But anyway, that all worked really, really fine. On a daily basis, just using this for your average ride for $160, considering all it took to get there, except for the mount thing, which was a little iffy, absolutely no complaints. Well, until. So then I decided, let's try using it with a route. Now I created a route on Ride with GPS. It was just a simple little 7-mile loop out of my house. I just wanted to see how that felt. Getting it into the computer, like I said, not terribly difficult. Pushed it to my phone, pushed it to the app pushes it to the C606. You get into the C606, you navigate to the route, hit start, it gets going, you're out, like you would normally do with a cycling computer, and off you go. I got to the end of my driveway, out into the street, turned left, and the C606 beeps at me, and I look down to see what it's saying, and it says, you have reached your destination, route ending. but I actually was at the end of, I'm like, well, yes, I'm at my destination, but I'm starting from my destination to do the route to get back to my destination. Okay, let's try that again. Go back, stop the route, stop the ride, start the route, thinking, okay, there it is. There's a nice little blue line to follow going out. I get about 100 feet out of my driveway. It says, you've reached your destination. Oh, really? So for some reason, the computer doesn't seem to be able to understand that because I'm in the place where the route stops, it's also the place where the route starts. And it seemed to think that you've already been there, done that. Didn't seem like it understood that I need to go 7 miles before I get back here. That was very odd. So what I did was I went about 2 blocks away where the ride started, went down, added the route. It brings the route up and it followed it back to the end. And when I got to the end, it automatically said, you've reached your destination, ending route. Well, that's silly. Okay, now I'm on the ride now and I'm routing, and it actually did a pretty good job. It has their version of like a Climb Pro type of feature in it. So when you come up to a hill, it'll bring up this little pop-up and it shows you your, the little colored graph, so to speak, shows you where you are on the hill. And then when you're done with the hill, it disappears. Okay, that's cool. I like that. It also has a page when you're in the route mode where it'll list every climb. You can scroll up through the different climbs and see where they are and what they're like, how long they are. So that's cool too. And it actually would tell me to turn accurately fairly well. There are times though, like at one point it said 2.2 miles go straight, and yet I knew I had to turn in about half a mile, and the little arrow blue line on the map was saying, yeah, you got to turn in half a mile, and yet it was saying 2.2 miles go straight. I'm not really sure about that. Oh, speaking of maps, almost forgot. In the app, this doesn't come loaded with any maps. And it's a little bit limited memory compared to some other computers out in the market that have a lot more internal memory, which, by the way, you get what you get. You can't upgrade that later on. Memory is hardware. It's built into the computer. So in the app, I downloaded the maps for the general part of North America that I live in, and took a little while to download it on Wi-Fi, but that was okay too. Now, back to the routing. I went off route once. I just turned right into like an intersection, across the crosswalk, just to wait for traffic to clear before I went. And it beeped at me, looked down and said, you're off route. I said, wow, that was fast, man. I was only about 30 feet off route. I said, okay, that's kind of cool. Back on route. Thought, well, let's just go do that again. I went back off route, and then I went off route, and off route, and off route. And I got like a block away, and it never told me I was off route. So that was odd. At first it was super sensitive, then it wasn't. Doesn't seem like it reroutes very well. If it does tell you to reroute, it just kind of does a straight line back in the direction you should go. Doesn't really tell you how to get there. So that wasn't great. So after using this fair amount, who is this for and who is it not for, and is it for me? I'm riding with the normal weekly road ride group. It's an older group, but it's a good group and they're good cyclists. And almost everybody's got a computer on their bike of one kind or other, usually Garmin's, Wahoo's, etc. And they got radar and things. So it's a modern enough group, and they're on Strava and they're out doing rides and whatnot. And I asked this lady rider, I said, I see you have a Wahoo. I believe it was the Element, the bigger one. And I got to talking about the Magene, whether I liked it for the money. I thought it was very good. I said, well, the routing has been an issue. She, you know what she told me? She says, well, I've never done that with my computer. I don't even really know how to put a route on this. I'd like to know. Maybe someday I'll want to do that, but I really don't. I just kind of use it the way people use the computers for the numbers and things. I want it to go to Strava, and really, that's all I've ever used it for. And I'll bet you in that group, I'll bet you if you took a sampling, most of those people do not put routes on their computer. They don't create routes and upload them, etc., etc. They just don't do that. Now, if that's you, this is a strong case for the 160 bucks for a very, very compelling product. Now, the caveats are you able to maybe have some intuition setting that up, because you're not going to get a ton of product support if you don't know what button to push next or how to set something up. Well, the support is not maybe what you require, okay? If you can get past that, and if you can get past the mount kerfluffle where it doesn't come with a good mount and it sort of works with a Garmin mount, and I don't know where you buy the Magene mount. Supposedly that's going to be added to the Amazon store this year, but I can't promise that. Okay, there's that. Outside of those three things, the routing, the setup, and the mount, if you can deal with all those things, and some of them may not be a big deal for you at all, I just don't know why I wouldn't recommend this, because for the money, it is a very, very nice computer to use, and all the other features work just fine. Now, things like the routing and the mapping that maybe are a little rough around the edges or aren't working well, that's often typical in the life of a fairly new product, and usually upgrades and software upgrades as they come along, they'll push them out. You can upgrade your computer, and all of a sudden, well, things like that work better. That's not unusual at all, especially in a new product where you get a little bit of things that, this needs to do this better, and in the next revision, well, it does, and so that's very reasonable. If the basic hardware is there, and I think for the most part for Magene it is, well, then that's to be expected, but it isn't guaranteed, is it? You don't really know for sure if it'll ever get better. You're just hoping that it will. Because usually feedback from the marketplace will kind of demand that from the manufacturer. Now, when this whole process between Magene and I began, we entered into some agreements with the review process that we would stay in touch and whatnot, and they would give me some good feedback and I could ask questions, and that worked for quite a while, and all of a sudden, well, it just didn't anymore. Some reason Magene left the chat, which is a shame because I had some questions about this that I would like to have answered, like why in the world does this thing not know when I'm starting a route that I'm not ending a route? Things like that. Well, I don't know. So that's unfortunately where I leave it. Now, I said, I'd say, who's it for, who's it not for? I think I already talked about that. Is it for me? Well, no, because for me, routing is very important. I do actually follow routes. I do a lot of events. I create my own routes. So for me, the routing part of that's a very important part of how I use a cycling computer. And while I can maybe put up with the fact that when I go off route, it's maybe not the most responsive to get me back on route. Okay, I could probably deal with that with my phone maybe. But the whole annoyance of having it think that I'm at the end of the route when I'm at the start of the route, well, good heavens. I mean, I don't know what to think of that. And since I couldn't get an answer to my question, well, that's where I'm going to leave it. So for me, it's a compelling unit. For the money, it's a ton of value. If you can work around the things that I mentioned in here, that was my experience, I still do recommend this. But just keep in mind that, well, it's a little lacking in some places, and only you can really decide whether or not that is a deal killer for you or it don't matter. All right, that's it. You guys have a great week and or weekend, and as always, you go ride your bikes.